Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti and this is Ralph Valenti, and tonight it is official. Kenny Omega is full-time at All Elite Wrestling. All the things that happen here at the All Elite Wrestling ticket event we'll be talking about here on our episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble. But before we get to that, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to get to 5,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling Double or Nothing. So, Ralph, the big news that, of course, we're talking about here is that Kenny Omega is full-time in All Elite Wrestling. He is leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling. So, first, I will admit I was wrong. And, yeah, what do you think of the big news?
So, yeah, I mean, I think this is something that we kind of anticipated one way or another, whether it was part-time in New Japan or full-time in All Elite Wrestling. We knew that he was going to wind up, at least I suspected he was going to end up in All Elite Wrestling, and that was probably the biggest announcement that we got of the night. Of course, Kenny Omega came out at the very end, kind of picking up where being the Elite left off. They had the countdown on his phone. Eventually he came out, and then, of course, we get the epic stare down between him and Jericho, which will likely set up the rematch against for those two, most likely at Double or Nothing.
Yeah, one thing that they definitely said was that, or the crowd was chanting, was for the rematch.
Yep.
Rematch for Kenny Omega versus Chris Jericho. If this does happen, is it the main event of Double or Nothing?
I'm not sure if it's going to main event. The only reason I say that is because the Young Bucks were so adamant that tag teams can main event. And once they said that, of course, we also got the Lucha Brothers, who made a surprise appearance, who came out, roughed up the Young Bucks a little bit. So I got to think it's either going to be Jericho and Kenny Omega or potentially the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers, who end up being the main event there.
Yeah, I mean, the Lucha Brothers look really good, interrupting the Young Bucks here, and right after the Best Friends were announced as being part of the All Elite Wrestling roster. This time around, I will say we did get more names on the roster, but no one other than really Kenny Omega that made a splash. Like in the original announcement, we had Neville, we had Jericho. This time we had just Omega. Do you think that kind of makes it a I don't want to say depressing, but a underwhelming event, to say the least?
No, I don't think so. I think that at the end of the day, obviously there was speculation that Kenny Omega was going to show up based on when his phone and the countdown was going to run out. And people were hopeful that he was going to come out. And I think, he was probably the hottest free agent out within wrestling. And just having him there and kind of assuring all the fans that he's going to be full-time with All Elite Wrestling, I don't think it was necessarily a letdown. Obviously they did make announcements regarding some of the other talent that they'll be working with. They weren't as well known, of course, as Kenny Omega, but at the end of the day, that's something that they were very adamant about, is attracting some of the younger guys from the independent scene. So you're going to get that with any of these announcements, but I think the fact that Kenny Omega was there, the face-off between him and Jericho, I think that was more than enough to make the fans go home happy.
Now, we got two matches announced for Double or Nothing, one of them being a six-man tag, SCU, Christopher Daniels, Scorpio Sky, Frankie Kazarian against Shima of OWE and two other OWE wrestlers. Right. And the other one is Hangman Page versus Neville. It was made official for the All Elite Wrestling Championship. Now, both of these matches look like they're going to be good matches here. Which match are you more excited for, Ralph?
Well, I'm definitely more excited for the Hangman Page and Pac match. The only reason I say that is because I'm more familiar with them. Obviously, I know who SCU is. I followed their career. Christopher Daniels, I've been watching him since, TNA. Same could be said for Frankie Kazarian. But as far as OWE, I'm not all that familiar with any of the guys from there. But at the same time, this is why All Elite Wrestling is so special, because they're giving this platform to these guys, whether it's outside of the United States or just smaller guys on the independent scene who are up and coming. They're going to get to perform with some of the very best wrestlers on the card. and they'll be able to stand out. So giving them that platform is definitely going to be special for them.
Now, one thing All Elite Wrestling was saying since the beginning is the partnerships with other promotions. OWE got a lot of airtime here, especially that segment with SCU. But also I want to bring up the other partnership that they announced tonight, AAA, the big Lucha Libre promotion from Mexico. That, I think, is a very huge partnership. And actually, I was looking at their roster. A lot of names come out of there. You have Phoenix, who we already saw earlier tonight, Puma King, La Parca, some other, well-known luchas that have wrestled in the Americas that people would know. So, what do you think of the AAA partnership?
Well, one of the things that stands out to me, and I don't know if they still have an active partnership, but I know at one point they actually did have a AAA rather, had a partnership with Impact Wrestling. So it kind of makes you wonder, is Impact going to be willing to work with All Elite Wrestling as well? What does that kind of look like as far as AAA and Impact Wrestling as far as sharing talent and all of that? So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, the Impact Wrestling, I think time will tell whether or not we'll see a partnership with them in All Elite Wrestling, but I think this is huge because there's a lot of people out there that still don't watch Lucha Libre outside of, the Lucha House Party in WWE.
Oh, so I don't know why you'd watch that.
No, I mean, I can't either, but I think this is going to be huge for them, and they're not going to be main eventers, but they're definitely going to be middle of the card and going to be very exciting matches to say the least. So one of the AEW roster announcements that they made tonight was the first one, Sonny Kiss. Now, I'll admit, I don't know much about Sonny Kiss, but I do know that he is signed with Lucha Underground, and that's going to be very huge, Ralph. As you know, with all the contract situations, whether or not we are going to see a new season of Lucha Underground puts a lot of wrestlers in limbo. So the question is, do you see more wrestlers coming from Lucha Underground and join AEW?
I'm going to say yes. The reason I say that is because of the same reasons I said earlier. So they've been adamant they're going to try and attract some of these guys on the independent scene, really give them a chance to show off their skills on a much higher level on pay-per-views where you're going to have guys like Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho. So that's really the way that they've kind of dedicated how they're going to approach filling out their roster. So I'm going to say yes, that they are. We probably will see some more guys from Lucha Underground there.
And also on this ticket sale party, we did get the information on how the tickets are going to be sold. There's a pre-sale. They launched AllEliteWrestling.com during this event, and apparently the site crashed a couple times.
From what I heard, yep.
From what I heard, yes. And we also have you sign up for the pre-sale from now through Sunday at AllEliteWrestling.com. Then you get a pre-sale code, and then the tickets go on sale at Access.TV, which is the same TV network that airs New Japan Pro Wrestling and WOW Women of Wrestling. Does this ticket sale being on Access.TV, did they show their hand on where the TV deal actually is and ending up on Access TV?
Yeah. I'm not really too sure I buy into that all that much. The one thing I will say is I'm sure you're going to get people that are going to speculate that. I am a little surprised that we didn't get a TV deal announcement, but at the end of the day, they did say that whatever announcements they've got lined up, they're going to kind of spread them out. They don't want to just make all the announcements all at once. So from everything we've heard, from Chris Jericho to Cody Rhodes, there is a TV deal that's being negotiated. It's just a matter of time and where that TV deal ends up being with, or who it ends up being with, and once that announcement happens.
Another thing, a lot of focus on the tag team wrestling, especially when the Young Bucks come out, and they actually took a couple jabs at WWE for this, saying that WWE is not focusing on their tag team wrestling and programming, or I should say, they're not put on TV as much, tag teams. They didn't necessarily say WWE, but we all know they're talking WWE. And of course, you got some fans chanting "F the Revival," and we got the best friends out of this segment, and we got the Lucha Brothers out of this segment. So, what do you think about this as far as building the tag team division in AEW, Ralph?
I think it's great. I mean, if you look at WWE and all of the talent that they have in their own tag team division and kind of the tag teams that they, I don't know if waste is the right term, I guess underutilized. So teams like the Revival, you've got like the Authors of Pain. They're not a bad tag team. They're not great, but at the very least, it's encouraging to see a company that is actually going to try to promote tag team wrestling, because tag team wrestling can be very good, just as good as singles competition. So I love it. I was always a big fan of tag teams. I think especially for some of the younger guys or the other teams that are trying to break out within the industry, sometimes starting as a tag team and then ultimately splitting after that, it's better for them. You kind of saw that with Edge and Christian, the Hardys. So it's exciting. I love it. I think it's a good move by them.
Yeah, I think it's a great move, and it's very interesting to see so much focus in the tag team division. No one really has, I can't really think of a promotion in any wrestling promotion that has put so much focus on tag team wrestling, and the Young Bucks being executive vice presidents and also one of the main components of the roster right now. Do you see more emphasis in tag team wrestling and All Elite Wrestling than their singles competition?
I don't know if it necessarily means they're going to give an extra emphasis on the tag teams altogether in comparison to the singles competition, but I think one of the things that they're making very clear is they are dedicated to at least, giving the proper platform and the proper time to tag team wrestling, which certainly isn't something you're going to get from the WWE. Just looking at who they've got there right now, if you got the Young Bucks, the Lucha Brothers, and of course we saw Best Friends there. Assuming maybe at some point if they could grab somebody like the Revival and they go over there, you've got a really good lineup of tag teams within their tag team division. So definitely exciting.
Now let's bring on the women a little bit here, and Brandy Rose announces 4 women that are added to at least Double or Nothing. No one, I guess 2 are announced as full-time roster wrestlers, and that's Kylie Ray and Nyla Rose. I know Kylie Ray has done some stuff in Shimmer and Rise and Booker T's promotion. She's been kind of around the last couple of years. Nyla Rose, I'm not too familiar with. And then we have from Japan, Yuka Sakazaki and Aja Kong. And
right.
Aja Kong that's a big pickup for AEW for Double or Nothing.
Yep, definitely.
Are you a little surprised we didn't get a bigger name in the women's division?
Not really. If you kind of think about it, who are they really going to get right now? Maybe if they could work something out with Impact, I would expect maybe like Tessa Blanchard, but other than that, who could you really go out there and get that's going to make an immediate impact?
Right. That obviously would be the best bet, would be Tessa Blanchard. I know one name that gets thrown around a lot in the independent scenes, and she's also in Impact Wrestling, is Jordan Grace. But Again, she's also under contract with Impact Wrestling. So again, it all depends on whether or not we see that partnership. Do you see a partnership with Impact Wrestling?
I think at some point down the road we are going to see some type of co-promotion. I just don't know if it's going to happen right out of the gate. So I'm going to say eventually yes, right now no.
All right. And our last point here I want to bring up from this announcement, hour-long announcement, was Hangman Page comes out and he's not in full gear. Talks about how he is not going to be in full gear until Double or Nothing, and the crowd wanted full gear. Do you think this is a really good storyline heading into their match, Hangman versus Pac?
Yeah, if nothing else, it gives the hardcore fans that follow Being the Elite a reason to be invested in it. But also, I'm just excited to see the match between Hangman Page and Pac. So while that's all good and great as far as the full gear and that storyline kind of surrounding that for the fans that follow Being the Elite, the more casual fan, I guess, could just watch it to see the great match that I think it's going to be.
Now, early prediction, Ralph. Who wins the 2 matches that are announced so far? We have the OWE versus SCU and Pac versus Hangman Page. Who do you got?
Well, I think Hangman's going to beat Pac. Reason I say that is I'm not sure what kind of contract Pac has with All Elite, whether it's just like a couple of different, couple of various shows and agreed upon dates that he's able to perform at, and he's going to stay with Dragon Gate. We know Adam Page is going to be there for the long haul, so I think Adam Page wins, and I think SCU actually takes the loss in their match.
Yeah, I agree there. One thing that Christopher Daniels did do at All In, actually, Christopher Daniels won against Stephen Amell, right? If I remember. But then they kind of did a thing where he still put him over at the end, right, if I remember correctly. But Christopher Daniels is not afraid to put guys over, is what I'm alluding to here. So I do see OWE winning, especially when they're this partnership and they want to get them on the forefront. So I see OWE winning that match too.
Guys from OWE, kind of a little more exposure, give them the opportunity to kind of, give them some limelight. So I think SCU losing to those guys wouldn't necessarily hurt them too much. So I don't see them winning.
No. So and then the other one that could happen is the Lucha Brothers versus the Young Bucks. Wasn't official. Do you see that happening, possibly for the first ever tag team championships? Who wins if that's the case?
Definitely see that happening. It's a little early to predict who's going to win, but I'd imagine probably the Young Bucks.
Actually, I'm going to go with the Lucha Bros on that one. I mean, they can bring the belts all over, and, with everything with Lucha Underground, I understand, but still, I'd like to see that the Young Bucks are willing to put guys over, and it doesn't end up being the Elite being on top of everything like usually what wrestlers that have creative control do. And if the other match happens, Jericho versus Omega 2, Omega won the first match in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Do we see Jericho even it out in this match?
I actually think Jericho will win this one to set up the rubber match in the third match somewhere down the road. So yeah, I'm going to go with Jericho.
I agree. Go with Jericho. Maybe the rubber match is at the Jacksonville show. So, Ralph, thank you for Skyping with me here on this episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble. If you liked any of the points that we made here on this episode, make sure you like, share all over your social media, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to get to 5,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling, Double or Nothing. And, of course, follow us on Twitter at SCPB Podcast. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti, and thank you for listening to the Squared Circle